Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf, and keeping up with tradition, as you can see, another book haul. Let's talk about the books that I bought in April. It's a stack of seven. Seven seems to be my kind of go-to number when it comes to buying books for some reason. I don't know. And the first one is a book that I first heard about from the BookTube prize this year, and it's a memoir, Leah Ippy, Free, Coming of Age at the End of History, published in 2022. Leah Ippy is working as not an economist, how do you call those people, historical economist kind of thing, at the London School of Economics. She teaches Marx and, but that's not why I bought this. She was born 1979 in Albania, just before Albania, the internal revolution, 1990, free elections, and things like that. So she grew up the first 11 years in Albania, the closed, very closed communist country. I've never been to Albania. I have looked at Albania when was it? It was in the late 1970s, early 1980s, when the country bordering it was still called Yugoslavia, and I went on holiday there, and we went by car up to a mountaintop, and we could look down at Tirana, but we couldn't enter the country. The country was literally closed off for people coming in and going out. Anyway, that's just an anecdote. So I haven't read that much, certainly not memoirs from Albanian authors. Even though I heard mixed things about this, I was still interested, and that's why I picked it up. Free by Leah Ippy. The next one, as you can see from the bookmark thingy, I already started. Violet Moller, The Map of Knowledge, How Classical Ideas Were Lost and Found, A History in 7 Cities. And this one was published in 2019, so it's also relatively recent. I just came across this by chance when browsing books, and it sounded really interesting because I read a couple of books about how the ancient knowledge, also literature, when it comes to plays, Aristophanes, Euripides, how we have to thank the Arab world during what we call the Middle Ages of preserving, translating, copying these texts so that they finally could make their way again into our society in the Renaissance. So I think that's a fascinating story, and this one, I saw this and it grabbed me immediately, and I already, like I said, I started, and so far I'm really enjoying it. The next one I bought is also nonfiction, history, medieval history. Janina Ramirez, Femina, it's a glare here, a new history of the Middle Ages through the women written out of it. I first heard about this one from Melanie Martin's, aka used to be Mel's Bookland Adventures, and she talked about this book last year. I think it came out last year. Let me just check. Yes, 2022. And she raved about this book on her channel, and it sounded interesting because feminist literature, as you know, if you follow my channel, you know that I'm interested in reading about feminist history, and certainly discovering new authors, but also new fields. And this one, I know very little about medieval times. And is focusing on Europe, by the way, medieval Europe. And Janina Ramirez is a historian, a scholar in the UK, in Oxford, I believe. And this was actually meant to be a scholarly book. It has lots of footnotes and references and things, but it took flight into the general public, so to speak. I'm reading this together with Heidi from My Reading Life. We are halfway through. On this Sunday, there are 9 chapters, and we will read chapter 6 and 7 for a check-in next week. So I will probably finish this book towards the end of next week. Oh, and by the way, this is also on my 1001 books by female authors that I have to read before I die list, obviously, because it's written by a female scholar, but it is also about women in a certain time, Middle Ages. So yes, I will not talk about what I think about the book. I will do that in a wrap up. The next 2 are also for the 1001 challenge. I think the next 2, yeah. And they are both fiction. I mean, this is a non-fiction heavy book haul. I have to say, I've read a lot of fiction in March and April, mostly because, first of all, the BookTube prize that I judged ending in March, and then also, of course, the Women's Prize. I wanted to read all 16 books long-listed, and they are all fiction. So my reading was really fiction heavy in March and April. And as much as I enjoy a good novel, I was really having withdrawal symptoms because I like nonfiction as well, and I like to keep my reading balanced. Normally I tend to read more fiction than nonfiction, but a good third at least of what I read is normally nonfiction. And in March and April, I think I read 2 nonfiction books, so that was not even 10% or something. So this book haul, for obvious reasons, is nonfiction heavy because I really want to, feed this urge in May and read more nonfiction. But there are 2 fiction books also from the list. Babbling on, 1001 books I have to read before I die. And the first one is this, Mary Reynolds, The Persian Boy. Mary Reynolds was an American author in the first half, let's say, of the 20th century. She was born in 1911, and she wrote mainly historical fiction about Greek historical figures. This one is about Alexander the Great. I think it says here on the cover, a novel of Alexander the Great. Yes. And I think I saw this again. I was not sure which book to pick from Mary Reynolds. I had another book on the list, but I wasn't sure. And then I watched a video by Steve Donahue about his 10 most favorite novels or 10 most favorite books or something. And he featured this one as the best of Mary Reynolds' historical fiction. And then I thought, well, I'm going to go for this one. And it's also a Virago press, as you can see, a Virago, the apple. The Apple didn't invent the apple. It was Virago Press who invented the apple as a logo, just as a side note. And it does look a lot like the apple from the apple, doesn't it? But so that's also means that it fits the other project, one of the other projects that I have for 2023, indie press books, but also focusing on 2 feminist presses, Virago Press, which is strictly speaking not an indie press anymore because it was sold to Hachette, and the Feminist Press. So this also qualifies for that project. You have to, given the amount of projects that I have to double dip because otherwise I will not make any progress with my project. So this is on the list of the 1001, as is the next one. Elizabeth Taylor, not the actress, but the author, also first half of the 20th century. 1912 she was born, but in Berkshire, so an UK author. I have know very little about her, but she is on all the 1001 books. I mean, those books you can buy, 1001 books you have to read before you die, even though they are male heavy. She is always on those lists. So I incorporated her in my list as well. And I will be reading this as a buddy read with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, who also does the 1001 challenge, and she follows these official books, and she combined all 3 or 4 of them. So her list includes more than 1001 books, but we will be reading this together in May. It's about a woman, Amy. While on holiday in Istanbul, her husband dies and she is supported by a writer. She meets Martha, a young American novelist. Martha helps Amy, but when Amy returns home, she doesn't really want to keep up the friendship because Martha is not somebody she would normally be friends with, and then plot ensues from there. That's basically all I know, and I will tell you what I think about it once I finish my buddy read with Sandy. Then back to nonfiction. The next book I bought is Pandemic by Sonia Shah. This book was published in 2019, and it's on the Book Naturalist book list, the May read. It's not this particular book, by the way. It's Author Spotlight. May is Author Spotlight, and the author is Sonia Shah. If you're not familiar with the Book Naturalist book club, it's run by Heidi from My Reading Life and Doris from All the Books, and they pick 12 books / authors, one each month, that have all the books have something to do with nature. So it's nonfiction nature writing, memoirs, but also some fiction. And it's of course, the meaning behind it, the goal is to encourage us to read more books about nature writing books. And this, like I said, Sonia Shah is the author spotlight pick for May. Pandemic is about, as you can see, the subtitle is Tracking Contagions from Cholera to Ebola and Beyond, and she talks about those diseases. That's the subtitle over here. Whoops, yeah. I was reluctant. I mean, it's a topic that I'm fascinated by. I read a lot of books about the flu, the influenza virus, and the influenza pandemic during the First World War. I read those just before Corona hits, by the way, in 2019 by chance. And I read other books about viruses, and it's a subject that fascinates me. And this book comes highly recommended. I think Heidi was the first one who told me about this. But I read another book by Sonia Shah, The Great Migration, 2 years ago, about how we migrate and things like that. And she talks about an incident in Cologne a couple of years ago at New Year's Eve, and I live in Cologne. And what she tells the reader about this incident is like 75% BS. And that put me off this author a lot, because I can't really believe that the rest of what she tells me as a science journalist is better researched. But this is not, I mean, the incidents with at the New Year's Eve in Cologne were harassment of women, mainly by people with a migration background. People from Syria, men from Syria especially, were the biggest portion of the group of men who assaulted these women during New Year's Eve in the city center of Cologne. Anyway, so this is probably not such a political issue, but as a journalist, if you write about such an incident and you're just telling BS, but yeah, because this book comes so highly recommended, and because I want to participate in the Book Naturalist Book Club read in May, I picked this one up, but with trepidation, I have to say. And the last book is a chunker of more than 700 pages. Yeah, just under 700 pages. Don't exaggerate. And it's also on the my 1001 book list, and it's a collection of letters, one art by Elizabeth Bishop, selected and edited by Robert G. Rule. And this is also thanks to Steve Donahue. He is holding or hosting read-alongs at the moment, where he picks one book and we read that book together in the course of a month. And he makes videos, every week. So we read a portion every week. And for May, he picked this one. And because Elizabeth Bishop, she was a very well-known poet in the US. She won the Pulitzer and lots of other prizes, and so Elizabeth Bishop is on my list with poems. But I thought it would be a good twist to have, I will read her a poetry collection alongside this one, but to read her letters, to have her letters on the list, I thought that was also kind of, something else. So I will be reading this together with Steve's book club read along in May, 700 pages, letters of Elizabeth Bishop. It's selection. Obviously, she wrote many, many more letters than this. But yeah, I'm really intrigued. I love reading diaries and letters and things like that. So I'm really intrigued. So those are the 7 books that I bought for myself in April. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know whether you read any of the books that I featured or whether you bought any new books that you are especially excited about. Looking forward to your comments as always. I'm all caught up at the moment, so take the chance. And I'll talk to you all soon in the next one.